Welcome to God of Recap. In this video, we will explain John Wick. This movie tells the story of an ex-hitman who comes out of retirement to track down the gangsters that killed his dog and took everything from him. Can the ex-hitman be able to avenge his beloved dog? Let's find out in John Wick.
Afraid of John Wick?
John Wick tells the story of a man named John Wick, a legendary hitman who retired from his career as a contract killer to live a normal life with his wife, Helen. The two have lived happily for 5 years. However, John's happiness then vanished when he lost his wife, who died of a serious illness. At his wife's funeral, he is visited by a man named Marcus, an assassin who is also his old friend and mentor. Marcus expresses his deep condolences for the death of Helen, the only woman John Wick loved the most. That evening, when John is struggling with his loss, he receives a beagle puppy named Daisy that Helen arranged to send before she died to help him cope with his grief, along with a letter written by Helen. Helen hopes that John can feel happy again in the letter, even if only accompanied by Daisy. Despite John's very introverted and stoic nature, he turned out to easily form an emotional bond with Daisy, who always accompanied his days with joy. John often does fun things with Daisy, one of which is driving his 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. While stopping at a gas station to refuel, John was approached by a young man named ISF who seemed interested in his Ford Mustang. ISF tries to bid on the car, but John says the car is not for sale and then leaves.
How much?
Excuse me?
How much for the car?
After that, John, who wanted to relieve fatigue and frustration over Helen's death, drove his car at high speed on an unused airstrip. That night, he woke up to hear Daisy barking loudly downstairs. When he came down to check the situation, suddenly someone attacked John and knocked him down. It turned out that the one who broke into his house was ISF and his men. They beat John, killed Daisy, then stole his favorite Ford Mustang. The next morning, John buried Daisy in the backyard and cleaned the bloodstains on the floor. He seems very devastated by Daisy's death. The scene then switches to showing ISF bringing John's Ford Mustang to the chop shop of a man named Aurelio. ISF intends to replace the car's number plate. But after Aurelio saw the car, he looked very surprised because almost all criminals in the crime world knew who the owner of the Ford Mustang was, and no one dared to deal with the car owner, including himself. Aurelio then punched ISF in the face for his stupid act of stealing John Wick's Ford Mustang. When ISF threatens to report Aurelio's actions to his father, Aurelio replies that his father would surely do the same with him when he learns of his son's foolish actions who dared to harass John Wick. Not long after, Aurelio is visited by John, who identifies ISF as the son of Vigo Tarasov, the head of the Russian mafia in New York City. Aurelio doesn't try to cover up the facts and protect ISF, even though he works for ISF's father. After that, he gets a phone call from Vigo asking about his actions against ISF. He then conveyed ISF's actions to Vigo, in which ISF had dared to deal with John Wick. Aurelio then said that ISF had killed the dog and stolen John's Ford Mustang. After knowing this, Vigo looked a little shocked and immediately called ISF to come to see him immediately. That evening, ISF also came to see his father, where he was then greeted warmly by Vigo, before finally he punched ISF in the stomach for daring to harass John Wick. ISF, who didn't realize why everyone seemed so scared of John Wick's figure, then questioned his father about it. Vigo then explains to his son that John Wick is the most famous killer in the crime world. John Wick is a man who is very determined and committed to his work. Vigo then told his son that John Wick is a famous assassin, formerly in his employ, nicknamed Baba Yaga. Before he retired, Vigo gave him an impossible task, which implied to involve multiple high-level assassinations quickly. John succeeded, and his efforts were key in establishing the Tarasov syndicate. Vigo then revealed that he had seen John kill 3 men in a bar with just a pencil. He deliberately emphasized this to ISF to emphasize that the chances of him running away from John Wick were very slim. However, Vigo also did not want his son killed at the hands of John Wick and told ISF to go as far as possible and hide. After warning ISF of impending doom, Vigo tries to persuade John to seek retribution, but John refuses to speak. Vigo, who had suspected this, then sent a team of assassins to ambush John at his house. On the other hand, John, who had been preparing to return to being Baba Yaga, to avenge his dog's death and get his Ford Mustang back, had anticipated the attack. However, alone, he managed to destroy the entire team of assassins sent by Vigo. After that, he was visited by Jimmy, a policeman who often patrolled the area where he lived. Jimmy, who has learned of John's profession as an assassin, chooses not to interfere, despite knowing that John has committed a massacre in his house. After Jimmy leaves, John enlists an underworld cleaning service to dispose of the bodies and evidence in exchange for gold. Knowing that ordinary mercenaries would not be able to finish off John Wick, Vigo places a $2 million bounty on John Wick's head and personally offers Marcus a contract to kill John Wick. Marcus readily accepts the offer, despite his friendship with John. On the other hand, John seeks assistance from the New York Continental Hotel, which caters exclusively to the criminal underworld and permits no assassinations on its premises. Knowing that John is now staying at the Continental, Vigo then doubles the prize for those who are willing to violate the Continental's rules to kill John, where the hotel prohibits acts of violence and murder within the hotel environment. Winston, manager of the Continental, told John that Vigo has ISF under guard at his nightclub, the Red Circle. After getting this information, John was getting ready to take his revenge. That night, John enters the Red Circle, where ISF is guarded by his men. John kills a mob of ISF's henchmen and almost gets ISF. But then, Vigo's lieutenant, a man named Kirill, confronts him and manages to incapacitate him. Because ISF managed to escape, John was forced to retreat and return to the Continental to treat his wounds. When John is about to sleep, unbeknownst to him, Marcus has prepared at a location that allows him to kill John remotely. However, Marcus sees the movement of someone sneaking into John's room. Marcus then chose to warn John by shooting a pillow next to him so that he could anticipate an attack from Miss Perkins, an assassin and his former acquaintance, who sneaks into his room to kill him. John and Miss Perkins engaged in a fight, but John was able to incapacitate her and forced her to reveal the location of Vigo's front organization.
Little Russia. There's a church near Cannon Court.
After Miss Perkins tells him the location, he knocks her unconscious and leaves her with Harry, a fellow assassin who is also staying at the Continental. After that, Vigo rushed to the location where Vigo kept all the cash money and evidence of his crime, which turned out to be in a church. After killing all of Vigo's men there, John destroys Vigo's cache of money and blackmail material. On the other hand, Miss Perkins, who had awakened from her stupor, managed to break free and kill Harry. Meanwhile, when Vigo and his henchmen arrive, John immediately ambushes them and engages in a shootout with Vigo's men. But then, one of Vigo's henchmen manages to subdue John by crashing a car at him. John Wick was arrested and held in a place. Vigo then goes to John and taunts him for thinking he can leave his old life as a murderer and start a new life as an ordinary man. He also couldn't understand why John was so angry just because his dog was killed and his old car stolen. With his emotions overflowing, John told Vigo that ISF had snatched the only hope and legacy from his late wife and he would never forgive and let ISF be because of it. When Vigo's henchmen try to kill John, Marcus, who had always been watching John, intervenes again by shooting Vigo's henchmen, allowing John to free himself, strangling Kirill to death, and killing Vigo's other henchmen. John rushed after Vigo, who tried to escape. He manages to stop Vigo but doesn't kill him. John even forced Vigo to reveal the location of ISF's whereabouts because his goal this time was only to take revenge on ISF. Threatened by a gun, Vigo finally reveals the location of his son's whereabouts. John then travels to ISF's safe house, which is heavily guarded by Vigo's highly trained henchmen. But they were all no match for a John Wick, who was able to single-handedly kill them all, kill ISF, and avenge the death of his beloved dog. After completing his revenge, John returned to the Continental and immediately checked out from the hotel. Because he had been attacked while at the Continental, the hotel management gave him a new car as compensation. John then goes to Marcus and thanks him for helping him all this time. However, unbeknownst to John and Marcus, Miss Perkins learns that John and Marcus have been in contact and worked together to destroy all of Vigo's men and avenge ISF. Miss Perkins immediately told Vigo that Marcus had betrayed him all along. After knowing this, Vigo immediately ordered his men to beat and torture Marcus at his house. Although Marcus managed to kill Vigo's henchmen, he finally died when Vigo shot him. Vigo then called John and said that he had killed Marcus because he had betrayed him. John, furious because his mentor and best friend had been killed, then turned around and drove his car to come to Vigo and take revenge on him. But Vigo is planning to have Perkins ambush John. Meanwhile, Miss Perkins is summoned to a meeting with Winston, who has her executed for breaking the Continental's rules, having attacked John and killed Harry, both on the Continental ground. After executing Miss Perkins, Winston called John and told him that Vigo planned to escape by helicopter. After receiving information from Winston, John races to New York Harbor, where he kills Vigo's remaining henchmen before fighting him on the dock, where he challenges John to a duel with his bare hands. But then, Vigo pulled out a knife and attacked John, intent on killing him who had killed his son. But unexpectedly, John even deliberately allowed himself to be stabbed by Vigo, so he could disarm the knife and fatally wound Vigo, then let him die. Because he was badly injured, John broke into a veterinary clinic to treat his wounds. Shortly afterward, John releases a pit bull puppy scheduled to be euthanized. John and the dog walk home along the boardwalk where he had his final date with Helen. The moral of this film is never to interfere with other people's affairs and lives, let alone intentionally hurt them and rob them of the most valuable things in their lives.